parents promised to support me through college but secretly used savings to fund my sister's wedding, and when I found out, they said education would never matter as much as family tradition, and I had to choose between dreams and blood. I was lying on my bed, computer in front of me, scanning through the schools that I had applied to, and I remember having this mix of anxiety and euphoria because I'd just opened up my acceptance letter from the school that I really hoped to get into. It wasn't Ivy League or whatever, but it was nice, well respected, and I worked my butt off to even be in the running. I recall looking at that acceptance email, reading it over 5 times, mouthing the words out loud. "Congratulations, we are pleased to inform you," just to feel them again, like confirmation that all I had worked for actually counted. And in that moment, the only thing I could think was how my parents had promised me since middle school that they had a college fund set aside for me, that my future was secure because, as they informed me, education comes first. That phrase was an anthem in our household. Whenever I requested something little, like a new pair of shoes or being allowed to go on a school field trip, and they refused, they would tell me, "We're saving for your education. That is more important than anything else," and I trusted them. I held on to that like a lifeline when we didn't appear to have much in comparison to other individuals. And then, a week afterward, I overheard something that broke that anchor in two. My older sister, she was sitting in the living room with Mom, and they were talking about her wedding. I wasn't paying attention at first. I was just walking by, heading toward the kitchen. But then I heard my mom utter, "Well, at least now the college money is being used for something worthwhile." I froze. I mean, literally stopped in mid-step, my stomach just flipping as if I'd skipped a stair. I thought I'd heard it wrong. I leaned up against the hallway wall, out of sight, and listened. My sister was laughing, and Mom said weddings are only once a lifetime, but school waits or is dealt with otherwise. And my sister said, "I'm glad you and Dad do see it that way." I was worried about the money. The words hit me in the face. The college funds, being spent on something significant. And not only that, but the way my sister laughed, the way Mom hugged her, like it was the most normal, obvious thing in the world. I stood there dazed, blood thundering in my head, thinking, no, it can't be. That's my future. That's years of giving up. That's what they told me was what mattered more than anything. I didn't even ask them then because I was frozen, as if I went in there and asked, I would be bringing my worst nightmare about. Later on that night though, I couldn't take it anymore. I entered the kitchen where Dad was having tea, and I just asked outright, "Is it true? Did you use the college money on the wedding?" He didn't even blink. He just let out a big sigh, set down his cup, and uttered, "Your sister's wedding is something. You'll get it someday." I remember staring at him, wide-eyed and mouth open, but nothing surfaced. Finally, I managed to get out, "But you swore. You both swore me education first." He shook his head slowly, as though I was crazy, and replied, "Education is something, but family is everything." We wouldn't let her start her new life without parties for her because she deserved it. It was like I was watching someone remake my whole life right in front of me. All the sacrifices, all the times I went without asking, all the all-night study sessions fueled by the promise that it would all be worth it. Now it was a joke. I think I even laughed, that sour, shuddery laugh, because it was so silly. "So you're telling me my future is worth less than a party?" I jerked out. My dad's face hardened then. "Don't say it like that. Marriage is not a party. It's tradition. It's family pride. You can always finance college, work your way through, but this was our duty." I couldn't get past what I was being told. My whole life, they said that education was the only thing anybody could ever truly take from you. And now suddenly it was elective? Something you substituted with flowers and hors d'oeuvres and some borrowed space. I wanted to scream, but I just turned and walked away instead, tears stinging my eyes. I barricaded myself in my room and sat on the floor, trying to breathe, this burden that was suffocating my chest. I wanted to be thrilled for my sister, I swear, but all I could feel was betrayal. Cutting, profound, nasty betrayal. I couldn't sleep that night. I simply lay there in the dark, replaying every talk we'd ever had about college. Every time they told me, "Don't worry, we've got you." Every time I'd put aside my own wants because school came first, and I kept recalling my dad's words in my mind, echoing in an endless loop. Family is everything. But if family was everything, why didn't I fit into that? Why didn't my dreams count in that math? The next day, I tried talking to Mom. I thought maybe she'd understand it differently than Dad. I sat down next to her while she was making breakfast and whispered, "I don't know how I'm going to manage this now. I got into college, but there's no money left, is there?" She didn't even attempt to lie. She just gave me this tired look and said, "You're tough. You'll make do. Your sister needed our service more urgently." I glanced at her, wanting her to say something reassuring, but that was it. That was all she could offer me. I felt like I didn't exist, like my whole life was this backup plan they could simply discard if something better came along. And the worst part? My sister never even apologized. She continued smiling at me at dinner that night, chattering on about wedding colors and menus, as I sat in silence pushing food around my plate, watching my future slip away. I figured eventually the pain would dull, like if I left it alone for a few days, I'd become accustomed to it, but things just got worse. Wherever I turned, there was wedding talk. The house was filled with it. Flowers, guests, dress fittings, the photographer, and every word was a reminder of what was gone. My sister would hold out swatches of material to me and ask for my view, as if all was well, as if I wasn't silently breaking apart. And every time she did, I wanted to scream, "This is being bought on my future," but I didn't. I just nodded and grunted something like, "It's nice," or "That'll look pretty," because what was I supposed to do? If I complained, I was afraid of blowing up. School was hell too. Everybody else was discussing their plans, what dorm they were going to get, what classes they were going to take, who they were going to room with. Teachers congratulated me down the hallways because they recognized where I'd been accepted, and each congratulations was like a knife stab because they had no idea what was going on. I'd smile, thank them, but my head was going, what if I don't even get to go? What if it was for nothing? In the evenings, I'd sit at my desk and look at the financial aid forms, wondering how I could do this by myself. I googled scholarships until my eyes went crossed, filled out every form that I could find, but most of them didn't even get a mark. The numbers never added up. Tuition, books, dormitory. It was a mountain range, and I was looking down at the ground from the bottom with nothing to speak of except my bare hands. I'd shut my laptop and just bury my face in my arms at times, wishing someone would come by and tell me it was all a dream, that my parents hadn't spent it, that there was still hope. No one ever did. One night, I overheard my parents talking again. They were in the sitting room, half door ajar, and my dad spoke. "I hope she won't hate us for this." And my mum, with that soothing voice, replied, "She'll see one day, she must." I remember gripping the banisters so hard my knuckles turned white, biting my lips so hard it had nearly bled, because I wanted to run in and shout, "I already dislike you. I dislike you more than you know." But I didn't. I just went back upstairs and cried into my pillow, muffling my mouth so nobody could hear. The worst was how they made it look like it was all so easy, like my education could be postponed or replaced with loans, like my dreams were flexible but her wedding was carved in stone. They spoke of family first, but what they truly said was her family first, her happiness, her second chance. And me? I was just the leftovers, the person who would just figure it out. I started to drift away from them. Dinners became subdued for me. I'd wolf down food and leave the room. I spent more time in my own bedroom, more time at the library after school, just to stay out from under hearing another lecture on flower arrangements or catering menus. I hoped maybe my sister would notice. Maybe she'd pull me aside and say, "I know this is not right, and I'm sorry." She didn't though. She was smiling, aglow, swept up in the magic of planning her special day, and maybe in her reality, all was right. One evening, after I could bear it no longer, I confronted her. I demanded of her, "Don't you realize Mom and Dad used my college money on your wedding?" She shot me a look, and for a second I hoped maybe there'd be guilt, that she'd at least look sorry. But she just sighed and said to me, "I know it irks you, but weddings only occur once. College isn't disappearing. You'll figure something out." The way she said it, dismissive, nearly careless, seared me up in the chest. I barked back, "Easy for you to say when your future's been paid for with mine." She rolled her eyes, cursed at me for being dramatic, and stormed away. That was when I knew I couldn't rely on her either. The wedding day approached, and with that, the feeling of dread mounted. Invites piled high on the counter, my parents worried about seating charts, and I just went on to keep spiraling deeper into this pit of helplessness. I tried to trust my guidance counselor, who I was expecting to somehow magically possess some answer, but all she could do was assist me with completing more aid forms, send me to part-time job placements, and pat my hand sympathetically and say, "You'll get through this." I nodded, but in my mind I was screaming, "How?" The ceremony itself was beautiful, I'll give it that. The hall was adorned with string lights, soft music, all of it tastefully laid out. My sister looked gorgeous in her wedding dress, glowing in that sort of way brides do, and everyone around me seemed so joyful. I grinned for pictures, clapped during the kiss, danced half-heartedly at the reception because one does. But the whole time, I couldn't help but feel like a ghost at my own wake. Because all that twinkle, that smile, that clink, it was built on what was stolen from me. People would just keep repeating things like, "Such a blessing for your family," and I wanted to scream, "Not me. This is not a blessing for me." But I just stayed quiet, shrinking in on myself. After the wedding, and the house was finally still again, I should have felt maybe relief. That at least the planning was done, at least the craziness was over. But no, there was only emptiness. My parents glared at me with this expectation, as if I should bounce back, be grateful, get on with it. Even my father uttered a word one night, You must be proud of what we did for your sister. Someday she'll do the same for you. I didn't even know what that was. Was she going to fund my future? Pay back the years that were taken away from me? It was fantasy. And hearing those words let me know just how differently we viewed things. That was when the choice started forming in my mind. It wasn't boisterous and dramatic. It was hushed, like a whispered secret I couldn't ignore. I had a choice to make. Do I sacrifice my college dream, accept that my life would have to bend to their traditions, or do I battle for it, at the cost of upsetting them? The thought intimidated me, because in my family, loyalty came first. Disagreeing, disobeying, it was betrayal. But hadn't I done the same to them? I remember sitting at my desk, rereading my acceptance letter, the letters blurring together through tears, and thinking, this is mine. This was meant to be mine, and I don't want to let go, not now. I didn't know how I was going to do it. Loans, work, maybe both. But at this point, I secretly swore to myself, I was not going to let them take my future away from me. I remember the day I took things into my own hands like it were some kind of quiet revolution. I sat at my desk late one evening, the house finally still after the madness of the wedding, and I clicked a new blank document open on my computer. I started typing out all the possibility that occurred to me, all the ways to get through college without their assistance. Part-time, scholarships, grants, community college first, work-study programs. I laid them all out, one by one, attempting to justify a future that suddenly seemed beyond my reach. And the more that I wrote, the more I felt solid, as if taking back some part of myself that had slipped away under wedding preparations and family obligation. The next day, I woke up early, even before my parents, and started applying for as many scholarships as I could find. It was exhausting, repetitive, and sometimes cringeworthy, filling out the same forms over and over again, answering the same questions of achievement, and essays that always never felt enough. I thought how easy it would have been if the college funds had been available, ready as they had been promised. But that was gone, stolen, and now I was to fight on with nothing but determination. I spent hours on the telephone with financial aid offices, crying softly down the corridor when they informed me that I didn't qualify for some of the grants. With every rejection, I heard more, but I would not give up. I could not after they had betrayed me. The tension in the household grew. My parents started to notice the coldness, the way I hardly spoke at the dinner table, how I latched onto the first excuse to be out of the house. One evening, my mom requested why I was so silent, and I informed her. I'm trying to figure college out myself. She frowned, as though I'd done something wrong, and instructed, you don't have to do that. We'll help you. And I just shook my head, nearly laughing in resentment, because the help I wanted, the one they'd guaranteed, was already gone. My dad heard and muttered about pride and being independent, but it was hollow, as though he did not really understand the storm I was in. I started working extra shifts at the tiny coffee shop after school. It was exhausting, coming home late, being up doing homework until my eyes hurt, catching glimpses of my family. But there was a weird kind of pride to it too. I was building something with my own two hands, toward my dream even when the path was filled with pitfalls they could have shunned. And sometimes, when I was steaming milk or stocking shelves, I'd catch myself smiling to myself, thinking, maybe I can do this. Maybe I really can. The hardest part wasn't the hours or the money. It was the emotional cost. Every time I glanced at my sister, all spruced up or talking about her new home or future, I felt this slashing sensation of jealousy and resentment. But also, I felt guilty, because I did love her, and she hadn't done anything to deserve any of this. It was my parents who'd made the choice. Still, I couldn't help but feel like my life was put in suspension, my aspirations sacrificed for someone else's enjoyment. I had to remind myself time and again that my battle wasn't with her. It was with the unfairness of it all. There were nights I totally lost it. I'd be on my bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what could have been, replaying all the times they'd informed me that an education was the way forward, and just swallowing in this raw, jagged pain. But then I'd sit up, take a few breaths, boot up my laptop or grab my notebook, and push myself back into action. I eventually realized that in this instance, survival wasn't about anger. It was about perseverance. It was more about demonstrating to myself, if not anyone else, that I still had a future. I actually started saving money secretly every so often from work. The dollar would go into a small jar under my bed. My parents never noticed, and I would feel guilty at times for keeping it a secret. But I would also get this spark of hope whenever I was adding coins to it. Tidbit by tidbit it grew, and with each development, so did my determination. I was constantly reminding myself, I didn't need their blessing to live my life. I didn't need them to bless my dreams, and naturally, defying them had consequences. Fighting started creeping in, small initially, then bigger. I was out late one night working overtime at the coffee shop, And when I came home, my dad was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed. "You're working too hard," he said, his voice firm. "You're disrespecting family values." I scowled at him, trying to keep my voice steady, and said, "I'm not disrespecting anyone. I'm just trying to make my life happen." He scoffed, muttered something about stubbornness, and exited the room. I sat there, my heart pounding, thinking, that's it. This is what it's like to defy them, to actually stand up for myself. It hurt more than anything else, but somehow it felt necessary. Lastly, I got a small scholarship, enough to cover some books and a fraction of tuition. It wasn't everything, but it was a nod that I could do it. I set out making a plan: scholarship, work-study, part-time work, maybe even a loan if I had to. I had a weird mix of relief and fear, because the reality of all being done myself was terrifying. But at the same time, there was this peace of mind knowing that no one was going to be able to take this from me if I didn't allow them to. Amidst all of this, I learned some things about myself that I never wanted to learn but had to. I learned that my worth wasn't decided by broken commitments, or who managed to win favor with the family. I learned that resilience is not about dodging pain. It's about enduring it, and no matter what, choosing your dreams are worth it. I learned that the best possible people to protect you from harm are sometimes the ones who refuse to shield you, and you have to be your own protector in their stead. It's lonely and exhausting, but it makes something tough and inviolable. By the final semester of that, when I had taken classes at a community college in my area as I worked my jobs, I was tired, proud, and seething with quiet rage. I had done the impossible, as I thought. I had carved out a way for myself from the wreckage of broken promises. And even though it wasn't perfect, even though it wasn't the easy way that my parents had promised, it was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt like I had some control again, like I could breathe without thinking my future was being taken right out from under me. It was months before things at home seemed tolerable, and even then, it was precarious. The wedding was over, the photos were stored away, but the tension had followed each room like a shroud. My parents never apologized, never admitted what they'd done, and honestly, I stopped waiting for it. I realized that waiting for their acceptance, waiting for them to realize what they'd taken from me, was only letting them be in charge of my emotions, and I wasn't willing to do it anymore. I had my own life to fight. College itself was harder than I'd ever imagined. Coordinating work, school, and the emotional strain of being the underdog in my own household was merciless. There were nights I'd cry on the bathroom floor wondering if all the time I'd spent working 2 jobs was even worth it. I forfeited parties, all-nighters with my friends, even small family moments that weren't about wedding talk. But there were nights when I also felt this quiet sense of pride when I submitted an assignment, paid a bill out of my own paycheck, or clicked on an acceptance email for a scholarship I'd won. Those reminded me I was building something that belonged to me, even if it was small and imperfect. Every now and then, I'd see glimpses of my sister's life on social media, her honeymoon, her new apartment, her happily ever after posts, and feel this bitter twist of pain in my chest. Anger, jealousy, sadness, all coming at once. But I started to notice something strange. The more I spent working on building my own life, the less her life would sting. It wasn't that I lost interest in her. No, I still loved her. It's just that I knew I couldn't survive on her happiness. I had to find my own. And that, I think, was the turning point. I started forgiving myself for resenting her, because she wasn't to blame. It was my parents' choices that had gotten us into this mess. My parents, in the meantime, started noticing a change in me too. I wasn't quiet anymore. I wasn't this ghost who lived in the house. I was making myself heard in small ways, setting my routine, my needs, my agenda. My mom, hovering around me as though I were fragile, started stepping back. My dad, he still had that prideful bite to him, but even he realized that I was serious, that I wasn't going to back down because the odds were against me. The arguments didn't stop, but they were different. Less about the guilt, more about boundaries. By the second semester, I had managed to scrounge up enough loans, scholarships, and work hours to pay for a year of community college. It wasn't great, it wasn't exciting, but it was mine. Every dollar I paid, every hour I worked, reminded me that I hadn't lost my future. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. Hope. Real hope. The sort that was not based on someone else to hold them to their word or validate my worth. Reflecting back, I now understand that the hardest lesson was not about money or broken promises. It was self-sufficiency and trust. My parents, through no fault or perhaps fault of their own, taught me there is a possibility that promises are broken, that even those who are meant to protect you might not. And yes, it was painful in ways I'm still working through, but it also made me into someone I might never have found otherwise. I learned to fight, to survive, to stand up for myself when no one else would. I learned that family love is messy, sometimes imperfect, and sometimes it does not look like your dreams, and that's okay. That doesn't equate with the absence of love. It simply means you must do things your way. There were instances, subdued ones, when I'd stop in the library or after getting home from work and say to myself, I can't believe I did that by myself. And then I'd chip away at it, gradually adding, but I did do it. I really did. There was this small, steady pride that grew each day, a pride that could not be taken away from me, not even by my parents. I realized my life didn't have to be a shadow of theirs, didn't have to be tradition or choices I had not made. I could choose what mattered, what success was, and what happiness looked like. I still feel ambivalent about those days, naturally. Anger boils up sometimes when I reflect on the promises broken, the manner they set me aside, the cutting words that hurt more than any bill or debt ever would. But I've learned to carry that anger differently now. It does not overwhelm me, it drives me. It reminds me why I keep pushing, why I keep believing my dreams matter. I've learned too that family doesn't have to be perfect in order to matter. It's imperfect, sometimes painful, but it's part of the story that shaped me, and maybe that's enough. When I finally stood on stage at my first community college graduation, wearing cap and gown that I'd paid for myself in large part, I remember looking over at my parents in the stands. They were smiling, clapping, maybe proud, but there wasn't a knowledge of the journey it took to get there. And it was alright, because for the first time I realized it all for myself. I knew the nights I worked, the tears, the fights I had with myself, the times I wanted to give up but didn't. I knew what this victory really meant, and no one was ever going to take that from me. At night, late, I am still thinking about the choice that I made, the choice between dreams and blood. And now I realize that the choice wasn't so much dropping one for the other. It was about remaining with myself, even when everyone else did otherwise. It was about stealing my life, my education, my future, from the people I loved. And in taking that, somehow, I learned to love them differently too. Not blind, not unconditional, but wide-eyed. And here I stand, years later, still hauling the lessons, the scars, and the quiet pride that comes with having survived what felt like betrayal. I'm still friends with my sister. We still fight and laugh and have moments, but the ratio is off. Both of us have our own lives now, and for some reason, that strengthens the bond. My parents, they're still my parents, human, flawed, complicated, but I've learned that my life doesn't come waiting for their approval or comprehension. I've learned that family is important, but so am I, my dreams, and vows I make to myself. And sometimes, when I am by myself, I say it softly, to myself alone, I didn't quit. I didn't let them decide my destiny. And in this quiet, average moment for now, that is sufficient.